Okay, this is continuing on with nervous system. We're going to be going over classification of neurons, and then I'm going to jump into neuron physiology. I'm just going to condense that into one video since the second half's pretty straightforward. As far as the test goes, we need to know what multipolar neurons are. And the sections we have, there's multipolar neurons, bipolar neurons, and unipolar. Most of the cells in our body are multipolar. And this is also considered a motor neuron. And all it is we have, our neuron or the nucleus, and we have, these are going to be really kind of simple drawings. So we know we have the soma, which is the body, and then we have the dendrites, and then coming off of the soma we have the axon. And all multipolar means is that there's an axon and there's dendrites. That's it. Just that there's multiple dendrites and that there's an axon coming off of it. That's the only thing that you need to know for those. For bipolar, it's just and you have two axons. And that's it. You don't have any dendrites coming off them. It's just an axon in both directions. Then you have unipolar. And all this is it branches down and then goes into two different directions. And that's it. It doesn't have any dendrites, and it does have a connection, and it's always going down. If you see pseudo unipolar, which is the reason they're called pseudo unipolar is when these start out, they start out looking like a bipolar neuron. So when they start forming, they kind of look like this when they start. So that'd be stage 1, and then get a little bit lower. So that'd be stage 2, and then finally they separate into 3 sections, or into a separate section. So that's why they call it pseudo. For the test, I don't think he'll have pseudo on there. All you just need to know is unipolar is just an axon, and it's just a single connection underneath of it. Moving on to irritability. It's just the ability to respond to a stimulus, and then conductivity, the ability to transmit an impulse. For polarization and depolarization, if you ever want to look a lot into it, it's called resting potential. And that has to do with the whole process of how information is sent throughout the neurons. But for our test, all you need to know is you have your neuron, and then you have your axon coming off of it, and there's sodium-gated ion channels, and don't confuse this for the myelin. You have all these channels, and there's sodium, which are positive ions, and they're everywhere outside of the neuron. And when an impulse happens and it starts to move throughout the axon, these calcium-gated channels open because it's negative inside, and these all flood inwards. And the best way to remember, it's not 100% correct, but imagine if you had an impulse that it can't travel through this negativity, and it can travel using the currency of the potassium. So as these flood in and this becomes positive in here, the signal can continue to pass through, and these gates open up right ahead of the signal so that it can keep traveling onwards. And then as soon as the signal, we'll say it's over here, and it's past these, then potassium, I'll change colors. Potassium channels open, and they flood in, and it puts out the sodium, and it brings it back to a resting state. So, polarization is when there's the positive sodium ions on the outside. Depolarization is when everything rushes in. So you have this is just polarization. Or the resting state. And then to depolarize is when it becomes positive inside. So this is depolarization. And so that's pretty much it for the classification of neurons and neuron physiology. It's pretty straightforward. So for the test, we have multipolar, which has dendrites and axons, bipolar, which just has axons, and unipolar, which is also just an axon, but it's not actually off of the neuron. And I hope that helped you guys out. Let me know if you have any questions.